much for joining us. My name is Sally Penny. I'm in the Law UK. I'm a barrister. So Ella is from Pecan Partnership and is going to talk to us today about performance and learning. So I'm going to hand over to you, Ella, to introduce yourself and get going. Sorry, I'm just letting some people in.
Thanks, Sally. That's great. I've got to say, I'm grateful in advance for everybody's patience. I seem to have to, I'm contending with two challenges today. One is our Wi-Fi seems to be really mucking about today. So apologies if I do disconnect. If it happens again, I will try via my phone. And secondly, the council have decided to resurface the road directly outside our front window today. So I hope that's not going to get in the way, but tell me if it is. Yeah, I am one of three directors at Pecan, which we established about 8 years ago, myself and two colleagues who live down in the south of England. And our business is all about helping organisations improve performance through culture. So culture change with the view to creating great places to work and places where customers or clients love to do business. The research and in our own experience leading in organisations shows that actually if you get those two things right, a great culture, a great place to work, and also somewhere that creates an experience that clients and customers love to do business, they stand you in very good stead for long-term sustainable performance, even through crises. I know this is a crisis like we've never seen before, but when you look back at the lessons from 2008 and the financial crash and the recessions, they stand organisations in very good stead. So my own background was general retail. I was a senior leader there for quite some years, and then in financial services. I have not worked in the legal sector, so I will not pretend to understand your sector in great depth. But through conversations with Sally, we felt like this research is relevant for you. So I hope you find that. And I'm really interested to hear your perspectives in the Q&A once I've shared a little bit about our findings and to see what you think. See how it applies to your own roles and your own organisations. Sally, is that enough of an intro? Do you want me to?
Yeah, one thing you're grateful for, and then...
Oh, yes, great. So grateful for everybody's patience if indeed we need to draw on.
Sorry.
And grateful for joining you today, actually. Yeah, to Sally for the invitation. Really looking forward to sharing these findings with you and yeah, seeing how they land, getting your perspective.
Fantastic. Well, Ella's got 3 sons, and so I'm grateful that she's managed to make it and has brushed her hair even. I haven't. So I think that's really, real people and real business people. Okay, great. So over to you, Ella.
Right, so let me share my screen. Oh, it says you've disabled screen sharing, Sally. Do you need to re-enable it?
I think that's because you left and came back in.
Oh, yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, it ought to be working now. I've just done it again.
Let's see. Yeah, that's looking good. So I've got a few slides I'll run through with you and sort of bring them to life as we go. And then obviously the Q&A really to get into it and answer questions and get your perspective on things. So can everybody see that? Okay, I know you're muted. Shout up if you can't see it, I guess is probably a better question.
Yeah, it's great.
All okay, great. So just a bit of context before we get into the research. I think it's particularly relevant to share this with a group of women because from personal experience and from talking to colleagues and clients and friends, women have really borne the brunt of trying to cope during this lockdown period. The weight of family responsibilities, whether it's kids or parents or other things, and just juggling life's daily challenges along with work and there's a lot of this out in the media at the moment, so I don't think it's just me projecting. I think there is research out there that says that women in particular are really holding things together in this time. So I think we bring a particularly strong and relevant lens, and I hope what this does, this conversation gives you a little mini fire break in your day to reflect on the experience that you have had, either as an individual or as a part of a team or a group of people that you work with, or indeed your wider organization, if you're looking at your wider organization's perspective, to take some lessons, and I'll share the research lessons that we found, and look at what opportunity there is to take from that to be able to be really successful in the next phase, whatever that next phase looks like. I'll tell you more about why we did the research in a second, but just to get us going, you might have seen, I know Sally shared a link to our nutshells. We were sharing through the first few weeks of lockdown 60-second nutshells, just really simple top tips for people as we went. These cartoons are quite marmitey. I think you either love them or hate them, but they're a summary of some of the experiences that people are having. Overwhelm, Zoom fatigue. On the upside, learning new skills. I'm not sure if it's hula hooping and dancing and singing, but people are learning new things that they haven't been able to do before. They're enjoying more exercise, they're enjoying more freedom. On the other hand, a lot of people, women in particular, are finding themselves, having to wear their superhero outfit. They're being looked to for the answers to everything. People are running on empty. About 8 weeks in, I remember Easter being a point of thinking, goodness me, I haven't got any adrenaline left in the tank. But on the upside, people are achieving more than they ever thought they could. Equally, some good habits that we started right at the start are starting to wane perhaps a little. My 13-year-old spends the day in his dressing gown, getting his work done, I believe, but some good habits are starting to fade. So I share this because one of the things that became apparent very early on in our research is that everybody's experience is different. There may be some common patterns and common themes, but at a personal level, our experiences of lockdown are really different. And when you look at what it takes to perform well as any group of people, recognizing the context that people are trying to perform in is like your first step. That's your foundation step. And if I think just within Pecan, there are 3 of us as directors and an office manager, so just 4 of us who are employed. We've had more frank conversations in the last few weeks about this, the context we're trying to perform in, than we have in the 8 years we've worked together, because we've needed to be frank and truthful about that to be able to then contribute to what it is we're trying to achieve. So I'll be interested as you're looking those just for you to be wondering which of those do you relate to most, and it might be all of them. I feel like I have a real mishmash of experiences going on from hour to hour. So the reason we did the research, I feel like I'm missing a slide there. The slide's gone missing between me and sending it over. Anyway, I will share this verbally. The reason we did the research was that when we were starting to talk to clients just a week or 2 after lockdown, although people were saying it's extraordinarily challenging, they'd never seen anything like it, worried about revenue, worried about client retention, all sorts of things, there was a definite silver lining starting to appear in the clouds. There were some good signs. People talking about achieving more than they ever had, innovating more. They've been trying to be innovative for years, and all of a sudden they are innovating within weeks, making decisions more quickly than they ever had, being more collaborative. So a lot of things, given that culture is our bread and butter and what we help organisations with, there were early signs that there were some cultural changes, or at least ways of working, that were really positive and people had been trying to do for some time, that were coming through this crisis because they had no choice. And what we know about culture is that to change an organisation's culture, or a team or a group's culture permanently, you have to be very self-aware about what you've got and why you've got it, and you have to deliberately choose to make that part of the way you work going forward. So we wanted to draw attention to the good changes that are coming out of the crisis, the good and helpful ways of working that actually, if chosen and if embedded into the fabric of the way you work going forward, will stand organisations in really good stead to be successful in the next period. So that's why we did the research, and we did a short survey, and then we followed up. So with just under 100, mainly senior directors and executives in a whole wide range of organisations, size and sector. There were about 10% from professional services. I don't know exactly how many of them would be from the law sector, but professional services, obviously, I acknowledge is closer to your own experience, I should think. And then we followed up on calls with a large number of them to really get under the skin of the themes. So the kind of catch-all sort of headline statistic, if you like, was that 75% of people taking part were reporting a positive impact on the ways of working. So a huge positive coming out of how people were having to work to perform in the short term. And we were seeing a knock-on impact, and I'll come to the detail a bit later, on their performance. Yes, Sal?
Sorry to interrupt. Do you want to change the slide? We're still on which of these do you
Yeah, there's a slide missing, Sally, so I'm just talking over it, but I'll click on in a second.
No problem, no problem.
I'm not sure where the missing slide has gone, but it's okay. I'll move on in just a sec. So yeah, the missing slide has a picture of a silver lining in a cloud, and it has a 75% quote. That's all you're missing. So to dig into those, so what were these people seeing as positives that came through? There were 5 themes. The first one, I will find out from you later, I should have asked before, whether you talk about customer or client. I've heard both from the lawyers who I've had some contact with. So apologies if I should say client in this context.
Oh no, that's right.
Does customer make sense? Yeah?
No, clients.
Clients.
Yeah.
Okay. So a refocus. So a lot of organisations say that they're very customer focused or client focused, and some are hugely. Some are to some degree, but they have fallen into habits of assuming they know what people need, and they forget to have the conversations on a regular basis about what they really need right now, what's adding most value. And this crisis has prompted people to do that. We had examples of organisations running what they call hackathons, which are sort of short, very focused, creative sessions directly with clients or prospective clients to answer exactly that kind of question. What do you need from us right now? What are your challenges right now? How can we adapt and respond to what you need now? So that was one. A second theme was, this was a word that other people were using, so I pinched it, democratization in a whole host of ways. So an example came from the university sector, which we do quite a lot of work with, where there is traditionally a very strong hierarchy, a lot of status involved in relationships, and their habits that are deeply ingrained. And what they were finding was that by having virtual meetings, whilst they're a bit sort of overly managed in some respects, virtual meetings, an upside is that every voice was being heard. And some of that hidden power dynamic that dictates the way meetings often run or conversations often run in person was stripped away. And they were seeing that across things like gender, male, female, or age, location, organisations with a very strong head office in one place where the offices out in the regions tend not to have their voices heard. All of that was starting to balance out and have a much more level playing field, which bodes well for inclusive cultures, for example, organisations who are trying to work on their inclusivity and diversity. Caring does count. So we know intellectually that treating people well in an organisation breeds loyalty and engagement and commitment and contribution. But more leaders than ever are having to do this and have had to place that focus on well-being to have people actually function and be able to contribute. Things like weekly all-hands dial-ins, much more open, transparent communication about the current situation and what an organisation's doing, much more transparency about the immediate goals and priorities in an organisation, but particularly leaders showing that they do actually care about the experience people are having is paying dividends in terms of the loyalty and contribution people are getting in return. Agility, this came through very strongly. People who, have been trying to be agile, it's a bit of a catchphrase, agility, but they have really shortened their planning horizons. People are even on daily calls, agreeing depending on the sector and the type of business, what's today's priority? How are we going to allocate our resources to address that? Rapid and regular progress updates to make sure everyone's aligned to priorities. Habits which are really useful in any organisation trying to perform effectively, even beyond the crisis. And the last one was redistribution of time. A simple one. At one level, somebody quoted they were saving 50 hours a month without commuting. But it's sort of how people are choosing to use that time that is most valuable as a learning going forward, is what we've heard. The majority of people are trying to use that time actually for their well-being, be it exercise, walking the dog, seeing the kids more than they did at the start and end of the day. And trying to hang on to those habits going forward rather than letting that time saved get sucked into more work. So those were the top level themes that came through. Like I say, in the Q&A, I'd be really interested to hear whether those are things that you have seen, or indeed are there other positives that you've experienced that we haven't covered here. But one of the drivers behind doing this was because, as I said at the start, to hold on to these good things and to build them into our future ways of working, you have to do it deliberately. You have to have a conversation about it, to be aware of the positives and to choose them. This change model has been knocking around for a long time, but I've picked it out again because it feels very relevant for now. The crisis has made us unfreeze and let go of some old habits. It's forced us to do some things differently. But to refreeze them into our go forward world, our new world of working, we need to support that change and really keep at it and bed them in to our new ways of working. Anyone who's tried an exercise regime or a diet or new parenting habits or any sort of, New Year's resolutions are a classic, aren't they? They kick off well for the first week and then they fizzle out unless you put those supporting things in place to keep them there, and unless you keep revisiting them to really check that they're working and giving you what you were looking for in the first place. A practical example of this within our own world in Pecan, we've developed a toolkit, a 3-step, a conversation guide to help people have this conversation, and we were testing it out on ourselves last week. And one of ours is how much more efficient our meetings have become now we're doing them virtually. And they had to. I'm homeschooling 2 or 3 boys, depending on the day, at the same time as working full time. One of our others in the team is doing the same. We have to. Time is so precious. We have to be super efficient with it. And we noticed that we were being more effective. But as soon as the kids go back to school, that would probably lose its effectiveness again. So we've put in place a 4Ps framework, a meetings framework, which is quite a classic one about how to make meetings really effective. And we are making that our new habit to make sure we stick to this good new habit going forward. Meetings take up so much time in our day. You can save time and energy by making them effective. It's a practical example that we're experiencing now. Oh, this is the slide I was missing before. I don't know why it's appeared here. There we go. We'll move on. I've just put a few of the detailed stats in here. Sally, I think, is making the report available to everybody, but these are some extracts from the fuller report that I thought I'd share just to show you some of the specifics. We asked people what their top 3 priorities were for the next 6 to 9 months. And this was the order of priority. So revenue generation, of course, but interesting to us that customer experience or client experience, well-being and employee engagement were the next 3 ways that people felt they would generate that revenue. And through the conversations we had with people, it was very much, again, progressive, insightful leaders know that great customer experience, great working culture help you generate revenue. But this is an enlightening for a lot of people who perhaps have not come across that or haven't put it into practice so far. Another bit of detail, how are people going to address it? Staff development was overwhelmingly, and when we looked across size of organisation and sector, this was the one that came through most strongly for everybody. And in asking people, well, what sort of staff development, there were a couple of themes. One was coaching capability. They might not have called it that, but it was about a new style of leadership and also a new style of peer-to-peer relationships, because coaching, I imagine many of you have got experience of coaching either on the receiving end or in some way, shape or form, but the philosophy that underpins coaching lends itself so well to working in ambiguous, uncertain environments and to working remote teams where you need people to be very accountable for the contribution they're going to make. And you need to get that balance between challenge and challenging people to perform to their very best at the same time as understanding the context, as per our first slide, that they are trying to perform in, and the experience that they are having and what gives them the well-being they need to then be able to perform over a sustained period of time. One thing I do know about the law sector is that the hours are extremely long and stamina and resilience is needed to keep contributing over the long term. So again, that balance of being able to coach performance and well-being hand in hand is hugely useful for leaders of teams, but also for working with peer groups and leading organisations. So that coaching capability was coming through as a strong theme. The other thing that helps with is having difficult conversations remotely. That came through quite a lot around having difficult conversations is by definition difficult anyway. Doing it remotely can be even more tricky. The other theme in terms of staff development that came through was about decision making and having to get confident with making decisions with very little information at hand because of the degree of ambiguity that is around now and probably will be for quite some time. One more detailed slide to share with you about the stats underneath this. We wanted to know, okay, great that ways of working are changing for good, but are they having any direct impact on performance? And the way we codify performance, we gave people 5 choices: engagement, customer experience, efficiency, effectiveness, and productivity. Because obviously it's too early to tell whether it's going to impact on actual revenue generation, for example, or profitability. And there are so many extraneous factors anyway around those things. But there were 3 particularly positive impacts people were feeling on performance. Engagement, I think I've covered quite a bit already, and customer experience too. Although customer experience or client experience, what people were noticing was that they had taken perhaps where they had got closer to clients' needs in the past, it was done in quite a formal way, you know, inviting people into offices, doing conferences, presentations, and actually what customers were really responding well to at the moment was the human touch, the empathy, the, you know, how is this for you at the moment? This is how it is for us at the moment. How can we help you? In a much more, informal way. And organisations talking about, and I'm thinking of brand agencies I've talked to, for example, who are really learning this, saying, gosh, you know, we need to really drop some of our bells and whistles that we think are so important in the way we engage with our clients, when actually they want to talk to an empathetic human being who is interested in their challenges and willing to respond and help. And then effectiveness, I think, improved meetings, faster decision making, much more focused use of resources and clearer focus on priorities. The areas that are not benefiting quite so much: productivity, for all the reasons we probably all know, tech, as in my today's experience, but tech getting in the way very often, and a lot of sectors or organisations are not there yet with the tech they need to work well remotely. And also life, you know, people who've got kids at home, or partners, or younger people in shared houses, having to try and get the quiet room to be able to work from, that kind of thing. And efficiency for those same reasons. So we asked also, so with that as context, what do people think their main challenges are going to be going forward? Uncertainty, of course, will prevail, and hence the decision making. Social distancing, we know, is a very practical one. A lot of organisations are going to have to deal with. aligning to new ways of working. So this whole, how do we take what's working and make these part of our new world of work, given that the vast majority of organisations outside of travel, hospitality, that kind of thing, are expecting a blended working world to be their new normal, always having some people home-based, some people office-based, rather than everybody returning to what used to be our normal. Maximising performance and productivity and stamina, resilience, morale and motivation to keep going through this. Again, I'd be interested to know in the Q&A if these resonate with you, or if there are other challenges that are more relevant for you. So the recommendations, lastly, just before we do a Q&A, there were 4 that came through that we felt were particularly important. Number 1 above all else was have the conversation. With whatever groups or teams it is that you work with, have the conversation. Take the time out to reflect, to share your experiences of lockdown, what's worked, what do you want to freeze into your new normal going forward before the window of opportunity closes. And that's one of the things, again, we know about habits, and it's true of culture, is there will be a window within which it's much easier to bake in some new habits and ways of working going forward. As soon as anything that feels like a newish normal settles in, people will just get on with that and they'll have lost the lessons. So have the conversations in the next couple of months before the window closes. If you haven't already got really strong coaching capability in your organisation, build it in. And this is about coaching capability for everyone. It's not about having people as coaches. It's about building those skills that come with coaching, so that you can really get high performing relationships. That's the crux there. Harness those new levels of democracy, if that indeed is relevant for you. And that could be part of that conversation of the good that's come out of this. And again, stay close to customers and clients, but in a way that may be better than you've had before, in a more human way. People are listening harder than they ever have to their customers, with much more open minds. I know we have, again, within Pecan, we've been collaborating with our own clients around new services and products that we can have. We've been asking our clients, especially some of our long-standing ones, for help. You know, what's their perspective on what we should be doing next, which takes a vulnerability that perhaps we wouldn't have wanted to show before, because we wanted to show up as the ones with all the answers before. That's what consultants do. They have all the answers. Well, actually, showing some vulnerability is really reset our relationship in a more positive way with a lot of clients. Yeah, that was a quote from one of the people we interviewed, that actually, although this feels difficult, it may be exactly the right time to drive some change. I've just shared this quote with Judith Glaser. Judith Glaser is a really interesting woman. She's passed away now, sadly, but she had a whole mix of perspectives. She was an anthropologist, a psychologist, a business executive. And I think this quote really gets to the nub of what makes performance happen in an organisation. It's about the quality of culture, which depends on the quality of relationships, which really, when you look at a relationship, that is about the quality of the conversation. And I think and I find certainly across many sectors, the system itself that we're working in is outside of our control. And it's easy to get bogged down by all of the many things to do with our world of work that we can't control, and that we find frustrating, or we want to change, but we can't change it. But what we can absolutely control are the conversations that we choose to have, who we choose to have them with, what we choose to talk about, what we choose to avoid talking about, or the people that we choose to avoid having conversations with. But if you think of the conversation being the seed of a culture and the start point, you have absolute choice over that. And that can be the start of quite a tremendous change if you want it to be. So that's it. I mean, I've got my contact details there, which we can come back to. But I thought probably before that, Sally, did you want to open up the Q&A?
Let's clap for Ella, because that was really good.
Thank you.
Really,
I'm grateful for the clap.
yeah, so she can hear it.